I had come from New York City to Los Angeles because I wanted to be a playwright and write plays for Equity Waiver. I know it sounds crazy, but that was exciting to me. And so I started taking classes with Salome Jens to learn what actors were going to do with my words. And it was late 1983, 1984, and all of a sudden these actors I was working with started coming down with this really strange, mysterious disease that nobody knew anything about, but was scaring us like you wouldn't believe. And there was this really odd sense, this simultaneity of panic and love. You know, we all just, we didn't know what to do. We were trying to figure out how to help each other, how to help our friends, and at the same time be panicked, you know, because what happens if I catch it? And how do you get it? You know, is it airborne like tuberculosis, which a lot of people thought? So it required, in the face of this mysterious disease, all these ordinary people coming together to help each other, especially since the government was not doing that. I feel like we were a spiritual vanguard. I mean, we started talking about families of choice when our biological families rejected us. We found each other, and in my case, a lot of us found each other through 12-step meetings, which were proliferating because a lot of people started going to the meetings seeking family, seeking news, seeking help, seeking solace, seeking anything, and frankly, trying just to get a hug. Poor gay men just didn't know what was going on. I had one sponsee who was 22, and he was dying, and he said, you know, the thing that upsets me the most is knowing that I'm dying and I'll never fall in love. And I said, well, it's not the same thing, but I love you, you know, and I climbed into bed with him and hugged him, and, you know, and that's what we did for each other, is that we loved each other. You know, giving whatever we could, back massages, foot massages, hugs, kisses, when everybody else turned their back. It took a lot of activism, street activism, political lobbying, to get an AIDS clinic, because before that, you know, in the early 80s, you know, you'd have to get suited up with mask and gown and gloves and, you know, like hazard equipment to go in and visit your friend. Well, imagine being that friend, scared to death anyway, lying in the bed, not knowing what's going on with them. The nurses are scared of them. They're not giving them food. They're hostages to pain medication. You behave or we're not going to give you your meds, you know. And then to see friends being, you know, coming in, not being allowed to touch them in this full, you know, gear, accoutrement. It was horrendous. So at some point, when we learned that it was okay to, you know, touch our friends, that was so important. And it was a lot of the lesbians inside who were driving forces on that, touching these guys who were lepers and saying, don't worry, you know, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. There were a lot of women who had previously been in the women's movement, you know, feminists. Well, feminists weren't necessarily separatists, but there were a lot of women who were trying to seek their own identities apart from men tell you this is who you are, you know, and so there was a huge separatist movement, and that broke down when you saw the heartbreak. And the dying process was really incredibly difficult to watch because, you know, for instance, that last minute of having personal power, you know, Do you want something to drink? Oh yeah, here's the cup, and there's well, let me hold it for you. No, I want to hold it myself. And even though he's going to take the cup and spill the whole thing all over, it's that last little modicum of self-control, of self-empowerment, of, meaning something to yourself. So you have to let that go and let them, grab the cup. So there was a lot of pain. There was a lot of quiet activism. People don't call it activism, but that's what it was when the friends and, family started going up to the nurses, and saying, my guy's in pain. You need to do something for him now. And I was producing memorials and covering, now as a, reporter for the, what was then called the Gay Press. I was covering all these people and all the different activities and who was doing what, and plus my own friends dying. And sometimes that was the best I could do, was to come in with my little notebook and pen and sit there and take notes as they talked to me and told me what they wanted people to remember about them. My editor at the Bay Area Reporter, a guy named Mike Salinas, he used to call me an environmental reporter. And I said, why do you call me that? And he said, because the way you write is that it's almost as if you are there, that you put the reader in that position. And I said, well, that's actually intentional. That's exactly right, because I envision my reader as somebody with AIDS who bought tickets and wanted to go to this fabulous, event, but then got too sick to go. And so I wrote it for them as if they were there, and then to have their lover or friend read it to them. One of the cruel things that we started to recognize was that when people died, especially in the entertainment industry, they would die without any mention of the lover or the partner they'd been with for 20 odd years. So one of the things that I thought was so brilliant is Rich Jennings, who was at that time, he was a lawyer, and at that time was co-chair with Johanna Grama of GLAAD LA. And he took on the trades, Hollywood Reporter and Variety, and he took out ads, and he pressured them. He said, these are people everybody knows and loves, and when they died, you need to, say who their lover, what they died of, and who their partners, their survivors were. And he wound up getting that done. What the mainstream media would do is that they would defer to the parents. And the parents were ashamed of saying my son was gay and died of AIDS. No, my son had cancer, and it was unexpected. He hadn't talked to us in a long time. And, it was yet not only invisibility, but it was yet another erasure and distancing and indignity about who was dead and what they died of and who survived them. And oftentimes, especially in the beginning, these families would come in and evict the gay partner and toss everything out, That's why Lambda Legal, people like John Davidson, gave seminars on how to create a will. This is even before there was the whole notion of domestic partnerships. Most people didn't care about domestic partnerships, let alone marriage. But all of a sudden it became important to understand that, because otherwise you're spending thousands of dollars to create a will to say, this is who I'm leaving this stuff to because they're the love of my life.